Hello, and welcome to the Family Histories Podcast, the show for those of us sat quietly in libraries, archives, and spare rooms all around the world, tirelessly piecing together our collective social and family history. My name is Andrew Martin, I'm a family historian, and I'll be your host. In this episode, The Kindly, we'll be hearing about a woman whose experiences in 20th century nursing made my guest reflect on her own during the COVID pandemic. And we're looking for an 18th century woman in Berkshire, England. So, put down those old deeds, grab a cuppa, and let's meet our guest. My guest today is an author, award-winning blogger and former computer instructor, and really, she's just an all-round tech and genealogy nerd. Her love of this sees her streaming live panel discussions about the latest from the family history world each week across social media. She's perhaps better known within our community by her nom de plume, but before I introduce my guest, I must ask for quiet on the set, because it's the wonderful Dear Myrtle. Hello, Myrt. Welcome to the Family Histories Podcast.
So excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Andrew.
Oh, well, I'm thrilled that you're here and you've got the time to spend with me. So, yeah, it's great. Now, we always start with the same question, which is, how did you end up researching your family history?
Well, my first foray into genealogy at all was in 7th grade.
Okay.
Where I was taking my hand calligraphy that I was learning in my art class, and we had to do a, end of year project, and I wanted to do a family tree because then you can do the illuminated manuscript thing on the side, and I could do my calligraphy, and unfortunately my parents were divorced, so my actual pedigree chart was kind of empty compared to my mom's side. That happens in families, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There could be a little bit of acrimony.
Yeah. So how did you kind of work around this? Because obviously you're school age and you're starting to draw this. Were you having to go to relatives and say, can you tell me about this, or can you tell me about your parents and that kind of thing?
Well, I could easily do that on my mother's side, but this division with the divorce meant if we were going to have a happy mama, we did not talk about father, dad. But when I became an adult, the rules were different, and I was so lucky. My dad is or was an avid family historian.
Okay. He
had a plethora of old photos and documents and things from his medical school and, journals and different little scraps of paper, a term paper he'd submitted, his mother's nursing school notebook. Interesting things.
Yeah. I bet. So you've got these that you've got from your father's side, these wonderfully rich records. Mm-hmm. Were you kind of finding yourself checking some of the information that he had researched and maybe sourcing other records? Absolutely.
Much of his compiled genealogy was in the form of family group sheets.
Right, okay.
And they had a little teeny tiny box in the bottom right corner for sources, like 3 postage stamps worth.
Oh dear, yep.
Yeah. And in those days, he wrote to the Genealogical Society in the area where the ancestors lived, and he got a letter back. We didn't have Xerox machines when my father was doing research, or Same thing on my mom's side. She hired someone to take a bus to go to a courthouse, and then she received a letter from that person where she listed the marriage records that she found. So that was what they had in the 1950s and early 60s, unless you happen to live in Salt Lake and they happen to have a microfilm of some little distant place.
Yeah. So of these photographs that you retrieved or inherited, did they have the wonderful joy of having the names written on the back?
My father's side, yes.
Okay.
My mother,
Oh dear. Uh-oh.
no. In fact, When I first started making copies of old photographs, it was with film camera. We didn't have digital cameras in those days. And so I'd make copies of these, and then I sent those copies to her and said, "Who are these people?" And she wrote back and said, "I have no idea. These people are too ugly. They can't be our family." And I'm like,
Gosh.
gosh.
Brutal.
Yeah, that you could say that about my mama. You could, definitely. Oy vey. Anyway, yes. I think every family faces that challenge of who are these people.
Yeah.
And I've since found out through my own research, communicating with cousins through early Roots Web message boards that are no longer there, that this was their auntie or their grandmother, and they just shared their own photo with my side of the family. So yeah, they were collaterals and very important because they could share that information with me, and I'm the one that got the family Bible.
Oh.
So I could share my photo of, because I understood just writing it out in a letter was not good enough. I shared the photo I took of those pages in the middle of the Bible of birth, marriages, and burials. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. So what's your favorite record type?
Well, I'm sure every genealogist as a beginner recognizes that the census records, whatever country you're in, puts a family in a certain place every 10 years or every 5 years, whatever the time period is, so that you can look for a plethora of other records that may have survived. What helped me a great deal in determining research, I was used to the federal census records here in the United States,
Yes.
but some of the states prior to statehood, when they were just territories, would take a census every year, hoping they had enough people, and then this would help determine how many representatives in Congress, and so you'd get an annual one, and then you could see when the baby actually was born or the baby passed away, and there's now a second baby by that same name when a census happens every year.
That's good.
Of course, we have to remember that so far in my ancestry, we're all Caucasian, so it wasn't like some of my friends who have to deal with, even in a census where normally names are stated, just initials are used. That's really problematic.
Yeah, it's tough.
No, they had names, and you could tell by the arrangement if there was no age listed, then you could figure out which child was which, etc. Did have a problem though. We had a thing in my maiden name where my great-grandfather's name was Alma, which could be male or female, and my grandfather's first name was Shirley.
Okay.
So you could not, in our family tree, reliably say, "Oh, Shirley's a girl." You know, what can I tell you? We got a family that's kind of a little weird.
Surely not.
Okay, good pun. You got me there.
You're welcome. So if you're thinking back to when you got these records and you're starting to research, how did you learn to research?
Well, I think I was influenced by, again, middle school, where we took biology classes and we had to learn the scientific method,
Okay.
where you presented with a scenario, you have a hypothesis, and you seek to find evidence to support or refute that hypothesis. So my mind was already thinking that way, to think critically, even in 7th grade. I've lost it all now, but anyway.
No, you haven't.
No. So the idea, I grew up reading Nancy Drew and Hardy Boy mystery books where they solved mysteries that were conundrums.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, so to me, looking for any kind of documentation, and It would be a tombstone. It would be an obituary, which now I know those could be faulty, not as reliable as the death certificate with the doctor's signature, or the parish register where the minister of that particular religious organization says, I married this couple this day. So I learned about firsthand, secondhand, and evaluating reliability of the informant.
Yeah, key records. Mm-hmm. And certainly I'm sure you were making more citations than you could have been allowed to with those family group sheets.
Oh, for heaven's sake. I do wish, though, we were all excited if we were looking in a book and there was a page that mentioned our ancestor. As I do have a French and Indian war colonel ancestor in Conrad Weiser of Pennsylvania, born in Germany, where we'd take, by the time we progress and the libraries had those scratchy old photocopy machines,
yeah,
I'd take a picture of that page, and I neglected to get a photocopy of the title page, so yeah, we learn, we progress as we develop and grow. And of course, just because it's in a book doesn't mean it's true.
No, that is very true in itself. Now, obviously, you are running Mondays with Myrt and Myrt's book club, mm-hmm. and you are helping to share and teach and allow people to learn more about how to get the most out of their research or new research developments. That's great. But for a while, you retired, but then you came back, and now you're not so retired. What was it that inspired you to come back?
I just love to be in conversation with my panelists, people that show up. It's more than curiosity. It's an obsession once you start climbing your family tree. Yeah. I think you have to admit that.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's so fun to see someone else's take on something. I don't know it all. Don't tell my husband, but yeah, I don't know it all. And to watch somebody else explain how they use a particular record set or observe their thinking process as they're ferreting out what could be true, what needs more research, etc., is fascinating to me.
I certainly watch Mondays with Myrt, as I'm sure you know, and I really enjoy the different techniques that people are demonstrating on that. What's the best place for people to go if they want to actually watch this? Where can they find it?
If you go to YouTube and search for Dear Myrtle Archive, that's where my new post-retirement videos are going live on Monday and every other Monday. I've taken up more quilting. That's a holdover from my supposed 2-year retirement period. We always learning, always growing. That's how we keep ourselves young.
Yeah, very true. Now, I feel it might be a little remiss of me if I didn't ask, where did Dear Myrtle as a name come from?
Well, I was on the programming team of America Online's Genealogy Forum. And George Ferguson, our boss, wanted a daily column or tip of the day, like John Michael O'Neill does. This predated his publications. And so no single person could do that, but he asked me to do it. And I said, well, I'm not doing it as me. Let's think up a name, an old-timey name. And Myrtle came to mind. That's my paternal grandmother's given name. So the nom de plume of Dear Myrtle came into play because of that.
Okay.
However, my friends who knew me, those were the days when we'd get together and it was typed chat rooms, not voice. You couldn't see the face of the person. There was no video.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. And in the genealogy forum, they were I think we had, finally, by the time it started waning, 7 rooms open at a time. So this wasn't the chat rooms of what's your birth date and can we meet in real life on the side. These were dedicated teams of hosts on various localities or whatever. who knew how to do on-site research and long-distance research for that place where the, New England research or African American research. And so my friends who were familiar with my typos and my phraseology figured out who Dear Myrtle was within about 2 months. So that was where Dear Myrtle came from. And I like to think that my grandmother, who had passed away at that point, looks down and hopefully thinks that I've used her name well. I take on her persona. She was definitely wiser than I ever shall be or could hope to be, but I could live in that environment in my mind and speak as her and not have the hang-ups that we all have of, is my writing good enough? I could speak in colloquialisms and end my sentences in a preposition because that's who Dear Myrtle is, your friend in genealogy.
Yeah.
Not a person lecturing behind a podium. Just someone to talk it over with and see if that hypothesis might work or if this record set might be a good alternative.
That's great to know the backstory of Myrtle, and thank you for sharing her with us. Is there anything that the family history community or genealogy industry could do that would make it a better place?
Wow, I had not anticipated that. Well, first of all, let me compliment the genealogy community on embracing technology, because from our discussions that I started when it was letter writing, and we had to wait sometimes 6 months or a year before we got a handwritten letter back from the PRO stating this is information from the birth certificate. Yeah, it was horrible. And so as technology has come along, cell phone technology to capture images, etc., I'm really proud of genealogists. Some people say you can't teach old dogs new tricks. Yeah, I know that young and old and in between enjoy family history, climbing their family tree. But to take advantage right now of AI technology, full text search makes it so much easier to look at handwritten documents, have AI try to make a stab at it, and then compare and contrast with how I might construe that odd-looking letter or series of scribbles, as one of my children calls it, on a microfilm or digital image. That greatly improves the process and shortens the time period necessary to look at a document and evaluate if it really is something that represents an event in an ancestor's life. Where I think we will be going, and we're seeing this more and more with Ancestry's recent adoption of not full text search by name, but take a document you've already found and let their AI interpret it. I think every major website will have their own internal AI mechanism like that, so that people who aren't yet fully capable of understanding all the large language models and in Perplexity and Claude and ChatGPT, I think every website of merit in the genealogy vertical will have its own full text search. That will help us greatly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And one other thing, I wanted to mention how the impact of technology helped us through the COVID isolation.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that we were already beginning to embrace virtual meetings. I mean, they often thought of me and Cousin Russ and Mondays with Myrt and Wacky Wednesday work as we were kind of outliers. But boy, when we were all isolated, Zoom became not just a verb, but a way of life.
Yep.
And again, there's that embracing of new technology. It took people a while on the Zooming thing.
I agree. I mean, this podcast is a child of the pandemic and the lockdowns.
Yeah.
So who knows if it would exist in this form, or if it would exist yet, or at all, without that need to have conversations with other family historians that I couldn't have because I was having to stay indoors.
I totally get that. The need to connect is important. We may be up till 3 a.m. in our jammies and fluffy slippers in our computer rooms doing research alone. But to be able to share it with other genealogists, I mean, because most of our family members think we're nuts anyway, but to be able to share our breakthroughs is, when you're in the family search library in Salt Lake or anywhere else, and you hear somebody say, aha, or finally, the whole floor is excited because we know how long and hard the preparation for that breakthrough to happen has been. And yeah, being able to share it really helps.
I completely agree, but I'm slightly worried that you know about my fluffy slippers.
You bet. Are you? I just don't know if they're bunnies or what. Mine happen to be pink flamingos, not bunny slippers.
Well, listeners, you can imagine that.
That's from my Florida days, an old over.
Ooh, time for a little advert break. If you are interested in learning more about family history research, why not take an online course? Pharos Tutors offers short online courses on a variety of family and local history topics. Whether you want to learn more about how to do your research, have a yearning to learn more about manorial records, or are interested in a formal certificate program. With over 50 courses ranging from beginners to advanced, there is something for everyone. Why not take a look at the course list today and plan something for the new year? Visit www.pharostutors.com. It can be easy to just note the names and dates of our relatives and build a tree with just that. But our family trees can be a rich trove of incredible stories when we start to dig a little deeper. With this in mind, it's now time for my guests to choose one of their most fascinating relatives that they've researched and then tell their life story. Okay, Myrt, who are you going to introduce us to?
Well, as Myrt, I must tell you that my most fascinating ancestor is my grandmother, Myrtle Eliza Weiser.
Okay.
Who married a gentleman named Player, and then after he passed away, she married a gentleman named Severinson. She was born in May 1895 in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
I knew that from family records, but as we spoke earlier, we have to prove those handwritten family notations. And I found her birth entry in a huge register book. It's one tiny line that spanned 2 pages of the city archives in Salt Lake City, Utah. I don't know a whole lot about her childhood other than the family lineup in the 1900 U.S. federal census, where she and her mostly older siblings lived with their parents on 6th South. Her father was listed as a machinist, which surprised me. I'll let you know in a minute. And her mother was Eliza Marie Wasden, who was listed typically as women in that time period as keeping house.
Yep.
So the term machinist implies some skill, which surprised me. And where they were living wasn't the best part of town.
Oh, okay.
All I'd ever heard from family stories was that my grandmother Myrtle's father, Charles, was one of what we call a ne'er-do-well, who was taking leave of the family for weeks on end whenever a carnival or circus would come to town. So I think the family struggled.
Right, okay.
By the 1910 federal census, we find that Grandma Myrtle is enumerated with her parents. Most of those older siblings are on their own. A couple of younger siblings have shown up, and they're in Twin Falls, Idaho, where her dad is now listed as a gardener. By 1915, I have an actual class photo where Myrtle was matriculating at St. Mark's Nursing School back in Salt Lake City. And there's an interesting anecdote that she told Dad and has, I asked her about it and she said, yeah, that really happened.
Okay.
Nursing school was very strict, and it was unusual in those early years of the 20th century for women to have education beyond middle or high school.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And also at that time, women were just beginning to wear red lipstick, and, it was strictly forbidden at this very conservative nursing school. And one of her instructors, a Dr. Oppenheimer, was very insistent that his nurses lead this very conservative life, and they were simply forbidden to wear lipstick ever. But one time, he called Myrtle to account for the red stain of lipstick. The early lipsticks were really horrible, but anyway, she apparently used it the night before, and in class the next day, he yells out, "Miss Weiser, is that lipstick I see?" And she replied, "No, sir, I'm just nervous and have been biting my lips."
Oh.
Somehow, I don't know why he bought her story, and she was not expelled from school.
Oh, yes, yeah.
There were other anecdotes that she did verify that, they use ether for anesthesia. And they would experiment with that, and then the instructor would come in, and one of her classmates was so under the effects of ether that they just threw her in a laundry basket and piled sheets on top. And
oh my goodness.
So she had an interesting life.
She sounds a bit of a rebel.
Yes, it sounds like it. Her first job, though, she worked as a mother's postpartum live-in nurse, where she took care of the baby, washed the diapers, kept the house, cooked the meals, did the laundry for this mother and this household. There were 4 other children. $1 per week is what she earned.
Hard work.
Yeah, that wasn't a lot. I'm not sure if Myrtle met Grandpa Shirley in Salt Lake City when she was in nursing school, or because he was born and raised there. I do know that at the time they married, he was a wagon hauler. It was a big thing to be building the temple down at Temple Square in downtown Salt Lake.
Okay.
And so the stone quarry is on the south side of the valley up a canyon. And that was quite a lucrative thing for him to be doing. They married back in Idaho in 1917. I have that from Blaine County, Idaho. And they moved into a home that Shirley and his father, Alma, built across the street from Alma's house, where Shirley had grown up.
Okay. And
that's where my father was born. I don't know if he was born in the house or at St. Mark's Hospital. I have no idea. I imagine the hospital, all things considered. So Myrtle gave birth to my dad in September of 1918. That was just as that 1918 worldwide Spanish flu epidemic was in its height. And I have another tiny little photo from my dad's baby book where my grandmother is sitting on a baby blanket out in the yard in front of their house. And when you take a photograph with a film camera and blow it up, it's very different from scanning. I noticed a little placard in the window with a white cross on it, like a little cardboard thing. And Dad told me that what his mother told him, and I need to keep telling this story because we need to understand. I mean, I can't imagine having a baby in the middle of COVID. That's the same difference, worldwide pandemic.
Yeah, equivalent, yeah.
But Grandma Myrtle told my dad, and he told me that if during that pandemic time period in 1918, 1919, if there was a nurse or a medical professional living there, they put that placard up in the window. And I don't think that they took patients or anything like that. In fact, it was so constrained. Grandmother told me personally that during the pandemic, or she didn't call it a pandemic, she said during the flu epidemic, is how she phrased it, if a family on the street was taken ill, you didn't go help them by going in the home. What you do is you'd go grocery shopping, go to the baker, go to the butcher, the grocer, and bring the bag and put it inside the picket fence or put it on the front porch. Doesn't that sound like what we first did during COVID isolation?
Yes, certainly does.
I could really relate. So I could relate to my grandmother even long after she's gone by the experiences we went through in 2020.
Yeah.
So the next thing that happens was that Grandma Myrtle and Shirley took their family to Seattle. And the impetus for that move was the living in proximity to Myrtle's father-in-law. He apparently, Alma Old's player, was very overbearing. Anybody else have that in their family? Yeah.
Just a few.
A few. So, but my father's very youngest sibling, my Uncle Jack, he always thought the reason the family moved was for Grandma Myrtle's health, that she had a bad heart. That was not true.
Okay.
Dad told his brother, and I was there, I was Dad's principal caregiver during his elderly years. And so I took him to visit his brother, and I took him through the old neighborhood on drives. When Uncle Jack said, "Oh, we have this heart issue coming from our mother's side of the family," and Dad said, no, her heart was perfectly fine. It was Dr. Oppenheimer, her old instructor from nursing school, who had delivered all the babies she had. Well, that should tell me hospital. I've answered my own research question there. He signed a paper advising Myrtle to move to sea level for her heart, knowing that that would then not cause a rift in the family because we need to move away from a father-in-law. But anyway, they thrived in Seattle. Grandma Myrtle she and her husband had what they refer to as the first gas station in Seattle and the first parking lot. And Dad said that his mother served as a nurse during World War II on the Seattle waterfront, giving inoculations to the servicemen who were going to be shipping out with the Navy to be serving in the Pacific during that war. And sometimes she would even bring home a particularly lonesome, fresh off the farm kid that was not quite, he was out of his element. She'd bring him home for dinner. He referred to his mother, Dad referred to his mother as being very kindly that way. I like that anecdote.
Those lads must have been terrified.
Oh, I can only imagine. Because a world war? Yeah. Anyway, I do have documentary evidence from newspaper articles where my grandmother's photo was part of the article, where she was active in the Parent-Teacher Association, both locally with one local school or on a city level. One of the things she was particularly concerned about was that children would have shoes and galoshes, rubber boots that you put on over your shoes.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the big drives was to be sure that school children had shoes to wear, that they're warm and dry. And I thought that was an interesting thing that she did. Now, for me, from my personal experiences with her, I also think of her as a very kindly person. She taught me to play checkers and give away with the same checkerboard and little pieces, but you have to get rid of all your checkers. And we'd follow her to the local farm stand where she'd pick up tiny cucumbers the size of your baby finger that she'd make into sweet gherkin pickles.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I love those. And she was famous for her apricot preserves, which is, if I ever make jam on the years that are even the hardest for me, it's got to be apricot jam. Or preserves, which means it's lumpier. It all works out. But she was also smart in that, I was 5 and my brother was 3, and she needs to make the apricot preserves, and that means the water bath canner on the stove and boiling water. So to keep us out from underfoot, she would have us paint the front porch steps. So what she would do, because we were quite little, she would equip us with what to us were very large house painting brushes, but we were little, and a bucket of water. Now,
Okay.
yeah. So the steps were wooden and they were painted dark green.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that on a dusty day, you take a brush with water and you paint back and forth, that clears it off and makes the dark green come up. And by the time you've done...
Magically changes colour.
It does. And by the time you get to the end of the lowest, the top one's dusty again, and you need to paint it again. That could be the weirdest anecdote anybody's ever shared with you, I think.
I love it, though. But I wonder how many times she pulled that stunt, to be fair.
Well, I should ask my cousins because they live in the vicinity longer than I did. She may have used that trick or two. She's just, she would finally come out and, oh, you did a wonderful job. The steps look so great. But my brother and I were also very happy. Anyway, that is my ancestor that I have loved learning about through not only these anecdotal family legends. She is a family legend to me. She's my nom de plume. And also through finding original documents that mention her specifically. She passed away of Lou Gehrig's disease, and I was fortunate enough to bring my 6-week-old baby up to see her and get a 4-generation photo with her. That is one of my prized possessions.
Fantastic. When you saw those early photographs of her, were you able to kind of recognize her instantly, or did she look so different?
I recognized her instantly. She did wear the typical modified Gibson in that photo.
Yeah.
And in other times you could see the penchant for doing the close to the scalp finger waves at different time periods. But I had known her and loved her and studied her face and snuggled up with her on her 4-poster bed at night. I knew my grandmother. I could pick her out in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I loved her and still do.
Well, she sounds like a very lovely grandmother and a very kindly woman as well. So thank you, Myrt, for sharing the story of Myrtle. But I think it's now time for you to face
the brick wall.
I bet that, like me, you have loads of brick walls. They're those pesky barriers between you and your next research discovery. Frustrating, aren't they? However, sometimes all it takes is a bit of help from someone else to give that wall a nudge, and the brick wall turns to brick dust. Yes, it's time for my guest to share one of their brick walls in a hope that one of you, dear listeners, can help to solve it. So, Myrt, how can we help?
Well, my brick wall is Hannah Hudson, who married Benjamin Saunders in the 1780s in Bisham, Berkshire, England.
Okay.
I have no concrete idea who her parents are. I discovered her when searching for the christening record of Zillah, and that was in 1788 in Bisham. But Hannah's christening is not listed there.
Okay.
There are siblings of Zillah, her daughter, and I haven't yet found the marriage of Hannah and Benjamin. I saw it in the parish christening record for the daughter. Family Search has Hannah Hudson listed as the child of John and Anne with an E in another place in Berkshire, Sunning Hill. But to me, the evidence is not without conflict. There are other Hudsons in parishes around. Zillah wouldn't be appearing. It's an unusual name, but things like Hannah and Anne and all that, those are common names. Yeah, I'm not convinced that somebody didn't just take the first Hudson family somewhere in Berkshire and say, that's the guy. Those are the parents. Typically, I've been trained, I don't know about you, Andrew, but I've been trained to start looking in a radius about 7 to 10 miles and gradually go to other parishes around to find evidence.
Yep, pretty much.
And if you look at the topography, in the west-northwest part, there's unpopulated, I'm assuming it's a mountain, from the topographical map that I looked at. So that kind of questions part of it, although there is a river going through it, and I don't know how that could influence travel to market or anything. But usually we think of mountains as a pretty big barrier for people, given that you had to push the cart up one side and the brake might not be good enough on the other side. So it might take a mountain to discover, moving a mountain to discover really where Hannah comes from.
Yeah.
If I could spend more time searching all the parish records for christenings, marriages, and burials for anyone named Hudson, I would happily then ferret out which Hudsons are which over multiple generations. And then I would be able to support or refute to my satisfaction exactly who Hannah Hudson's parents are.
Wow. So I guess with Hannah Hudson, do you have a sense of when she died at all?
No burial.
And is that the same for Benjamin as well, her husband?
Well, he supposedly, it just says 1834 Berkshire, doesn't give me the parish, which is interesting. I say he's of Bisham because of the event of marrying a woman from Bisham, but I don't know that he's from Bisham. I don't have his christening. Where I have a christening is Zillah, and that's the only tie to Bisham that I have. So when I have a child born in a certain place, I know the parents had to be there, or at least the mom.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's why in my mind, in my personal database, I say he's of Bisham, Berkshire, England. And I can't prove that.
I wonder whether there's any kind of record of bans for Hannah and Benjamin, bands of marriage, that might reveal them.
Yeah, I know to look for marriage bans. I know to look for bishop's transcripts, in addition to the regular parish register. And people think that the bishop's transcripts are perfect and exact, and they're not.
No.
And they're not available all the time. The bishop's transcripts are what the parish priest submitted to the bishop, supposedly archived as opposed to a parish church where the roof leaks, etc.
Yes. Yeah.
Where parish records may not have survived.
Exactly.
So it's real shaky there. And this is not my only brick wall, but this is the one that's closest to me that I'm very curious about.
Okay, so what's the best way then for listeners to make contact if they think that they have a clue or a research idea for you?
Okay, the best place to communicate with me is DearMYRTLE on Substack.
Okay.
You can also write to me via Gmail, DearMYRTLE@gmail.com.
Yeah.
There's that name Myrtle again.
Lovely. Of course, listeners can head over to familyhistoriespodcast.com where they can read this episode's show notes and send us a message, or they can just email us at hello@familyhistoriespodcast.com and we'll pass the message along. Now, my fingers are tightly crossed for this one, and hopefully we've got some Berkshire listeners who can help you with this. But while we wait for them to get back to us, it's just possible that I can help you with this. But you'll need to follow me through to the garage.
Okay.
Here we are, my secret time machine.
A time machine? That's pretty darn impressive.
Yes, I know. It's a fully functional, highly technical and scientifically calibrated piece of equipment. Oh, and this is Sándor Petőfi, a 19th century Hungarian poet and revolutionary with a 22nd century diploma in electrotechnical services.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. How does this machine work?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, so I'll tell you later. But I wondered whether you might like a trip back in time, perhaps to solve your brick wall for yourself.
Really? Oh, that would be wonderful.
But?
Well, being the technology expert that I am, from the look of that screen, you need to reload the kinetic dimensional stabilizers.
I need to do what?
Right there.
Well, how do I do that?
Oh, I'll explain later. Just watch.
Did you know this?
Yes.
There we go.
Oh, thanks. Well, unless there's anything else that needs sorting, then just take a seat over there. And Sándor and I will do whatever else needs setting up. Yep, that's it. Right. When and where would you like to go to?
I'd like to go to 1788 to attend the baptism of Zillah, the daughter, in Bisham, Berkshire, England.
Ah, yes, of course. All Saints Church, yep. There we go. All set.
Oh, how do I get back?
I knew there was something. You'll need this temporal beacon. Keep it safe, and when you're ready to come home, just press the big button on the top, and you'll be back here in a flash.
Okay, let's go.
Right, here we go. Hold on to that hat, dear Myrtle. Thank you, goodbye, and good luck. So, how did we do?
Look.
Oh, the River Thames at Bisham. Very nice. Hang on. Did she say whether she could swim or not?
I don't know.
Ah. The Family Histories podcast was presented and produced by me, Andrew Martin. My guest was the wonderful Dear Myrtle, with John Spike as Sándor Petőfi. If you've enjoyed this episode, then why not help the show grow by sharing it with all your friends? Thank you for listening. Approximately no family historians were harmed in the making of this podcast.